permeable pavement, the only fundamental process is infiltrations. And infiltration, you know what drive infiltrations. So that's the head difference. That's the infiltration rate is driven by delta H over dl. Delta H is the head difference between 2 points, and L is the length of the or depth of the permeable pavements. And that infiltration rate, or instead of writing infiltration rate, that I'll write Q. And you know this one equal to K. Okay. So this is the head difference. And this is the area of the asphalt or the permeable pavements, and K is the hydraulic conductivity. That's basically that porous structures permeability. So this is the Darcy's law, you already know, so there is really not much to write there. You know, already have a homework question on that, so you know pretty well how to use Darcy's law. Just want to mention that Darcy's law tell you the Darcy's velocity, which is not the actual pore water velocity. If you want to calculate the pore water velocity, that would be Darcy's velocity divided by porosity. So that's the porosity of permeable pavements. Okay, and this one you know as Ki. If you know water velocity, if you know the distance of depth of filter layer, then you can calculate what's the interaction time for contaminants for the filter layer. So let's say the depth is d, you know the velocity of water. This is the time for interactions. Okay, this is not hydraulic retention time, because once it infiltrates, it's stored in the system. It doesn't necessarily leave the system. So that actual hydraulic retention time is different. That's based on the volume. This is most based on the flow. Okay, interaction with filter media or filter layer. The second component is the storage. Storage is once it's infiltrated, as I said, the storage layer is at the bottom, which has usually gravel filled with gravel or other materials. So there you have, you are talking about this large, when you are calculating what's the storage. So it's all go here, and once it filtered, that's right, it's filtered water, so it doesn't have much sediment. Once it goes there, it's stuck in between gravel pores. So if you want to calculate storage, that's the porosity. So porosity, I'll write NS so that it's distinguished from this one. This is an infiltration layer. So porosity of filter layer. Porosity of the storage medium. So that's the total volume, or the pore volume of pore in between this, in that storage medium by total volume. So that's the amount. This is the storage capacity. If you fill the entire layer, then that's the amount of maximum water you can store. So if somebody asks what is the hydraulic retention time, or how long the storm water stays in the system before it leaves, then that time HRT is you know the volume of pores by exfiltration rate. So Q exfiltrations. So it's how quickly you are letting the water leave the system. So that will tell you the hydraulic retention time. And hydraulic retention time is important because you want them to store there, give enough time for the groundwater discharge to occur. At the same time, you do not want to keep it for long, because if you keep it long, there will be anoxic conditions, there will be bacteria, all that stuff. So you don't want to keep that for that long. But this is just another design parameter. How long it store. And the main point here is that all the stormwater that's supposed to be runoff now stored underneath. That means it's slowing down the stormwater flow rate on the above ground. At the same time, it also reduces the peak discharge. So Q peak is what it reduces. Again, as I said, you have porosity or the storage or flow, both are function of porosity. If it is more porous, it becomes more likely to infiltrate quickly. So you have this different layers. So I wanted to show that you have this top layer, and then you have we call choker layer. That's the course where you put little bit so that it stays stable. So that's the fine materials. Then you have filter course. Filter course means things that actually remove sediments. So that has some removal pollutant capacity. So again, it says pollutant, that's mostly think of sediment. Some dissolved pollutant can be removed if the flow rate is slow and if it has some reactive materials. So you see all these choker claws, you see this one? This is just to ensure that you have different layers stay at place in that locations. And also it helps not having other layer falling into the another layer. So it helps to minimize those mixing. So then this is the reservoir course, or we can call this one as a storage. These are the largest particle size. And then you have under drain. As you see, these are perforated pipe that will allow the water to move from different locations. And then you collect it. And in this case, it says that under drain is optional. The reason it says optional because if your soil, underground soil has high infiltration capacity, that exfiltration rate, then obviously you will be able to remove or allow that water to infiltrate into ground. Now, there is a question I think long time ago somebody asked, what if, because there is a storage capacity, it cannot store more than certain amount of water. What happens once it fills completely? The question, once it fills completely, that means there is no more treatments. All the runoff will all become, there's no extra runoff, no extra infiltration anymore. So that's why all these things are designed for certain rainfall design stuff. Beyond that stuff, we will not treat anything. That's true for any green infrastructure. It has a capacity. And so when you design this thing, you also have to know what a rainfall rate or the rainfall capacity you are designing it for. So that means if you want to design bigger storage event, you just have to dig more and create this storage layer, bigger storage layer, which is more expensive. So you see the porosity, this porosity will be the lowest. I'm sorry, not porosity, the particle size D will be high. If I write D50 or 50% passing, D50 is very high. And this one, filter layer, would be the low one, lowest possible. That way you can remove a lot of water. I see my screen has been frozen, so I'm going to stop it sharing and then I'll restart again. Right, so that's the slide we had before. Any questions so far?